Voyager hanging on, the Vulcan is ramping up production, and will Elon Musk have to step down from SpaceX if he accepts a US government appointment? All coming up on the next Orbital Edge. Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Orbital Edge News, a brand new show for passionate spaceflight fans. And you know the drill, recent launches. Starting the list of launches is the Long March 2C. This launch happened on November 8th at 10:39 UTC and is carrying the Zhongyong 2 as the payload of choice. And next up, a Falcon 9 launch. And this one launched from Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This launch occurred at 12:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 17:22 UTC on November 11th. This vehicle will carry the Korea 6 satellite for South Korea. The core booster will also make its way back to the Cape, performing its glorious landing with its signature sonic booms. Let's roll right into space news with some recent development in deep space. This is coming from the Voyager 1 spacecraft, which we launched back in the 1970s. This spacecraft was being bipolar recently in its communications with Earth. And maybe pun intended, but communication is key when it comes to the Deep Space Network and its team that tracks everything we have launched since 1963. The Voyager has recently went into radio silence in the middle of October, apparently shutting down one of its two main communication transmitters. And both of these are powered by the X-band radio frequencies. These frequencies can range between 8 and 12 gigahertz. So what had happened is the spacecraft proceeded to shut down one of the X-band transmitters, and it turned on the S-band transmitter, which operated at much lower frequency, but also uses much less power. This weak transmitter was last used way back in 1981, and it only operates at the 2 to 4 gigahertz range. But let's take what we can get right. Its faint signal was still captured by NASA scientists, which is amazing as hell, and also a testament to the integrity and perseverance of the Voyager 1 team keeping this legacy spacecraft alive. Now there is a risk in turning back on those X-band transmitters, which would, they'd allow the scientists to investigate why the signal loss occurred in the first place, but the switchover may cause maybe a power surge, or some sort of anomaly which could permanently fail the spacecraft for good. It's absolutely super cool to hear these historical missions still giving us more history. Up next, we've got some news in China space. So what's going on over in China from Zhu Guilin, the Minister Counselor for Science and Technology? He was open to some level of cooperation from the United States on spaceflight. Whoa! We have been so disconnected from China this whole time. We've never ever had any cooperation with China in spaceflight at all. So this is some optimist news so far, but let's not get our hopes up just yet. The Bill Nelson, the former administrator of NASA, did have this argument. There is this whole issue of cooperation versus competition. So there's a disagreement in the terms of, like new space versus old space. Cooperation is more how Artemis 1 is doing their program, having countries like Europe work on the Service Module Orion spacecraft, and then other states in the United States working on other parts of the Artemis rocket as well. That's a great example of cooperation in space. Then we've got competition. However, this always comes with delays and lack of funding. So I think we're just kind of sitting on the fence right now on this. My personal opinion is we should partner with China. Because you got to think of it as, if we're going to move forward to Mars and get humanity to Mars, and of course a permanent human presence on the moon, we're going to need more money for that. And how do you get more money? You pool together multiple governments. Because so far, right now, private space is not doing a very good job, not only calling in investors and backing their space programs, but recent private spaceflight missions haven't gone so great either, and we've discussed that on the show a couple times with a couple of these private moon landers. None of these landed perfectly at all. And of course, the Astrobotics moonlander we've discussed earlier this season didn't make it very far at all. There was an issue right after the payload deployment of the new Vulcan rocket. So we're not sitting pretty right now in private space. I do have faith that private space will slowly get better, but government space is always going to be better all the time. They're always going to be 1 to 2 steps ahead. So we do want to quote this one thing before we move on from Zhao. China welcomes participation from space agencies all over the world, including the United States of America, of course, he said. History has proven that isolation is not a solution and that cooperation is the only solution to go forward. So now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, will Elon Musk have to step down from SpaceX if he takes office in 2025 as one of Trump's appointees? Stay tuned. Don't go away. All right, welcome back. Let's steamroll right into the topic here about Elon Musk and him possibly having to step down from SpaceX. And also, Tesla and Twitter might be something he may need to step down from as well. And this is in light of him possibly being chosen by the new President-elect Trump for his appointment of the Chief of Department of Government Efficiency, which actually stands for DOGE. And we all know that Elon Musk is behind the Dogecoin. But the short answer is yes, he's going to have to step down from SpaceX. But the long answer is to what degree? We will only be discussing the SpaceX portion of this, but the long answer is very complicated, so we're going to break this down with the context that we need to drill down to and the exemptions that would allow Musk to remain in control of SpaceX. The main avenue that will shut down Musk's tenure is the Statute 18 U.S.C. 208. This is simply the federal conflict of interest regulatory protection that bars a private company from gaining federal funding while in office. However, there are waiver exemptions depending on the nature of the business. Ultimately, for Elon, SpaceX is heavily subsidized by the U.S. government. People at SpaceX are ultra silent on this. Now, people at SpaceX are very silent about this. I haven't heard a peep from any employees at SpaceX, and they're not even asking these questions, which is very strange. The reason for this is probably that they're fearing for their jobs, and I would be too. And if Elon is forced to step down, you can definitely bet there's going to be a lot of reorganization at SpaceX if that was to occur. I can bet you 100% of the SpaceX workforce is loyal to Elon Musk. And these would probably be the same people that wouldn't try to be ruffling any feathers as well. So here's the thing. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, has never existed. It was just invented by the Trump administration. And for you Starship fanatics, this might come as the worst news because our community has also shared their thoughts about this speculation. So RoboBeat really on Reddit says this: the only thing that makes me wonder is his second highest, or whatever it was, in the US Diablo 4 character. Wonder if he's bored and his companies wants to do something new. I mean, honestly, that's a huge time investment. He must be checked out of SpaceX and Tesla to do that. depending on how large this role is, yes, from a physical standpoint, he's not going to have time to run or oversee SpaceX and any other of his companies as well. He's going to invest a lot of his time in saving the government taxpayer money. But that's going to get us into another conversation just a bit down the road here. I do want to get through what the community has been expressing here. So now, aside from gaming taking up a part of his time, there's no way he could tackle all these mission critical obligations at once, and let alone stay clear of the financial gridlock that would block any federal funding coming in to one of Musk's enterprises. Now, we're going to move on to another community comment here. It's from SVH01973, and this is coming from Reddit. There seems to be no legal obligation for cabinet officials to resign from companies, even if the relationship with the company would seem to be a conflict of interest. The Senate can reject him as a nominee based on the perceived conflict of interest, but is not required to do so. So the key word here is cabinet official, which Elon has not been appointed to, and he hasn't been nominated to that either. Cabinet members are way up there. They're the layer below the presidential status, and Elon Musk definitely is not that high up in the government. He has no political experience whatsoever. So with that said, we can still see an issue here because he takes in a lot of federal funding for SpaceX. If he is in the position of saving taxpayer money, that's going to be a big issue in him receiving federal money. Because what is to stop him from shifting taxpayer money into SpaceX and get more money, taking away from other programs that the United States does need, whether it's for the Department of Defense, border protections, the FBI, CIA, all these agencies, and any discretionary spending agencies that, of course, help everyday Americans. If he was to be caught funneling money from those programs and then sending them to SpaceX, he'd be absolutely federally liable. And we could probably, like the stock market where, there's this thing called inside trading. We could just probably call this inside fiduciary transfer. I'm just making up that term because I'm not aware of an actual technical term for what Elon Musk may be set out to do. So, I think I pretty much nailed, what's probably going to happen if it's an involved role and he is truly messing with taxpayer money. He's not going to get federal funding, which is going to make him step down from SpaceX. If he does not step down from SpaceX, his role is going to be a little bit more of an advisory role. And, recent news, he's been hiring some people to work 80 hours a week for free, kind of like interns, to help him carry out some unknown tasks. I don't know what these are. Everything's a bit too soon to make any speculations right now because, again, he hasn't been officially appointed to that position yet. So everything is rumor on how Elon Musk is going to handle this. So that pretty much sums all that up. We are not going to have comments from last show because we haven't made a show for over 2 months. I have to be honest with you. A full-time job is actually, it's interfering with how often I can do this. But as I'm proving right now, I am still excited to give you the space news whenever I have, the opening to do so. And also, next episode will be number 10, so I'm going to do something special for that. But we're also not going to have the orbital trivia either, so it does make this show a little bit shorter than usual. And that's all I have to say for you space cadets out there. And thank you for listening to me at Orbital Edge News. I do appreciate you. Also, don't forget to do the whole cliche YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. We are a brand new show for passionate spaceflight fans. We are still the only spaceflight show so far to actually cover a diverse set of subjects, and we don't have any biases anywhere. We cover anything significant in space news. So yeah, I'm just gonna kill some time here because, you know, again, we don't have comments from last show. We can just kind of soft end this, and I do want to hear from you in the comments. What do I need to improve on in the show? What would you like to see differently? Would you like to have me cover more astronomy type things? Do you want more, any sort of do-it-yourselfs, such as, you know, how do I get a job in space? How to view a rocket launch? I'm absolutely open to doing a show on teaching people who come to the Cape for the first time, and their first question is, how do they see a rocket launch? Awesome. I'm definitely going to want to make a show about that. Also, we just signed on with Blue Sky, so go ahead and join us over there. Every week we're going to post a launch calendar so you guys are up to date on the upcoming launches. This is going to be for the next week, so that will come out every week. But on the show, we do launch calendars that usually shoot out for every 2 weeks. And thing with the Twitter or X, we're going to kind of sunset that. It's just a platform that's not giving space flight news any space in exposure and engagement. X is very heavy on photography, and they're very anti. It's weird. They're anti-space flight. It's really crazy. They always find something negative about spaceflight. You know, they dog shit on SLS. They want government space done for, and yeah, okay, get rid of government space. Here's what happens. There is no space. Private space is still requiring government funding. China will end up overtaking us in space if we have that attitude. And I promise you that. I know what's going on. Space is dear to my heart. I've been interested in space since Kerbal Space Program came out. It was just a couple of years after they released their, you know, earlier beta and alpha versions. So I joined in on when Kerbal Space Program had their Space Launch System Asteroid Pack. And that's kind of when I joined on with that. Unfortunately, I've been part of the whole Kerbal Space Program 2 disaster that was, so that was a bit disappointing. This camera right here is on super low battery, so I am definitely gonna call it quits right here. So again, I'm the host, Chad, and I will see you next time.